Good evening. Welcome to the June 14th Gilliland Central School District Board of Education meeting. If you could please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The first thing we do is a showcase of student work, right?
Yes, I'm just delighted to start our meeting off tonight with a showcase of student work, and I'm going to ask our instructional administrator for art, Sheila Ilario, to introduce our two students who have created amazing videos. So Sheila, it's all yours.
Good evening. Thank you for having us tonight. The two videos that we're going to see tonight are award-winning videos that come from a regional competition that we participate in called the Media Arts. And the two students that we have with us tonight is Dylan Schmidt. He is an 11th grader, and we also have Catherine Rafferty, who is a senior. So the first video I'd like to share with you is Dylan Schmidt's, and his is titled The Cloudy Photograph. But before I begin, I'd like to invite him up so he could just share with you a little bit about it. Someone got the lights?
Thank you, Mrs. Ilario. Before I begin this video, I just want to say that this video was inspired mostly by my dog, which at that time, he was 12 years old and he was going through some pretty bad medical problems. So what I decided to do was give him a way to leave a legacy before he left, or he parted. So this video, I would like you guys to enjoy the Cloudy Photograph. Thank you very much. Does anyone have any questions before I let my friend Katie take her video? Well, thank you very much.
Dylan's video won first place in narrative drama. So our next video is by Catherine Rafferty, and we're thrilled to have Catherine here. Catherine is normally behind the scenes filming the board meeting, so it's nice to have her up front. Catherine, you want to come up?
All right, so my video won in the narrative action drama, so it's like a complete turnaround from what we just saw. So it's kind of a psychological thriller, and the two characters in it have to figure out a way to get out of the school. They're like trapped. So let's just go ahead.
Just you. How'd you get in? I thought the doors were locked.
I've been here the whole time.
How is this? Wait, what do you expect from me?
What happened? How did you do that?
I was still here. There were still people. It was like a normal school day, but I wasn't there exactly. I mean, I could walk around and everything, but nobody could see me. So the person I saw earlier in the lobby, I think they're watching us. We gotta find them. I think they might know what's going on. Check the lobby. Not there. We need a plan.
Well, I had this all documented on my camera, so when we catch this guy in the act...
Oh, how are we gonna catch them if they keep disappearing?
Disappearing, that's it. What if he can go to the other world like you?
You're right. I figured it out. The phone controls where I am, so if the phone dies, game over.
Well, search continues for our missing camera person.
God, now I'm alone.
Thank you. Any questions for Katie?
Just a quick question. How did you do the fading in and fading out? That was very, very unique.
Oh, thank you. I did it in the editing process, so there's like a way on Premiere Pro, which I learned how to use in class, where you change the opacity, so I like layered clips on top of each other, so.
Now, what class were you taking?
I took the studio and media arts class. It was really helpful in like learning how to do all those editing tricks, so.
So now, how many other children took that course?
There was probably like 25 kids in the class, so, and a lot of them seemed to like it, so I'm glad it was added this year.
Interesting. Well done. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mrs. Alario. That was a nice way to start our meeting tonight.
You're welcome.
Thank you, good job, you guys. Okay, the next item on the agenda is public comment number 1. We have 5 speakers tonight, so if you could please come up to the microphone, announce your name, and if you could please limit your comments to approximately 4 minutes, I'd appreciate it. Thank you. First one is Sierra Lefebvre. Or Serena Lefebvre, I'm sorry. Okay. Number 2, Rachel Riley.
Good evening. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you this evening. My name is Rachel Riley, and I am a member of the Pine Bush PTA Board and the Building Cabinet. But tonight, I come before you as a parent with serious concerns regarding the upcoming pre-K program. The Board of Education policy states, quote, "We maintain a vision to provide for all a safe and welcoming environment where students, parents, and staff are joined in the pursuit of academic excellence and personal growth," end quote. Public schools have a responsibility to be transparent about how decisions regarding safety and the learning environment, as stated in the board's policy, are made. Unfortunately, in regards to the Victory contract, this transparency has been lacking. The safety and learning environment of Pine Bush students and teachers are at risk as a result of the decisions being made by the board. No solid plan to assure the safety and security of our Pine Bush students and staff has been provided. We have been told that pre-K parents will ring a bell and be met at the door to hand their children over to a Victory staff member. Victory does not staff its classrooms on a one-to-one level, so to state that pre-K parents will not enter the building, but will stand in the airlock waiting to hand off their children one by one defies logic. Once their parents are in the building and are free to move throughout the school, what guarantees do we have regarding the safety of our children? The safety and security of our children should not be a detail we figure out after contracts that change our school structure have already been signed. We are being told, quote, "It will be fine." Who among you will be taking the responsibility for this? The parents and the community will be watching for a definitive, logical, and enforced security plan that is put into place before Victory opens its doors. The pre-K program will be placed in the blue pod because of in-class bathrooms. This will disrupt our kindergartners and first graders with the noise that inevitably comes with preschoolers. Additionally, a playground is being added immediately outside the kindergarten classrooms. This will result in significant distraction during learning time for our youngest students. The educational environment of our Pine Bush students is being negatively impacted unnecessarily. For several years, ECEC has operated successfully in the Red Pod with little to no effect on the daily learning of our children. Pine Bush kindergarten teachers are facing class sizes of 23 students next year. Should any additional children register, we will need an additional section, which, according to the board's priorities, will require at least one of our classes to move from the blue pod to the red pod. Our students and teachers run the risk of being displaced because the red pod lacks a classroom with a bathroom. The board appears to be placing their priority on satisfying the needs of Victory rather than on the best interests of our students and teachers. Separating our K1, 2, 3, and 4, 5 pod structure may seem irrelevant to the board, but this represents an upheaval of our community that was done without consideration for or input from those parents, students, and teachers who treasure our school structure. We would ask the board to reconsider this decision. Make the necessary adjustments to the red pod, move Victory there, and minimize the impact of this program on our learning environment. Finally, I would ask you to consider the following. Who is your constituency? You are elected to represent the parents, students, and teachers in Guilderland. To displace our community without open-minded discussion and without respecting the input of those most heavily affected indicates that the board has perhaps lost sight of whom it serves. We understand that the contracts have been signed and that there is no stopping the pre-K intrusion into our school. However, we ask you to seriously reconsider the details of your plan and adjust the situation to better represent the needs, concerns, and wishes of the teachers and parents who will be greatly affected by your decisions. The safety and the educational experience of our children is at risk, and we are watching carefully to make sure the board works to protect those whom it has been elected to serve. And I thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next is Annette Landry.
Thank you for allowing me to share my thoughts with you today. And thank you for serving as representatives to our community. Growing up as a daughter of a board member, I understand the commitment and appreciate all of your efforts. To begin, let me first share that I have 3 children and have lived in the district for 21 years. In April, I received a letter for my youngest stating that she had not been recommended for honors English and social studies. Alyssa will be in 9th grade next year. Therefore, there would be no overrides allowed, and she would be placed in a Regents English and Social Studies section in the fall. The letter was signed by Anna Bartlett, the middle school counselor, so I called Anna, and she said that she did not have any say in the process of selection and that I needed to contact Mr. Finsall. I placed a phone call, and a few days went by, and I realized during that time that there were several other parents who received similar letters. Also, one of my friends actually received a letter stating that although her daughter had been recommended, she was randomly selected by lottery to be removed from the honors classes and placed back into Regents courses. My phone call with Mr. Finsall was rather quick. He explained only students recommended by their teachers would be placed in honors courses. He stated there were too many overrides, not enough seats available, and that there were situations in the past where weaker students had been allowed to take honors courses and could not handle the rigor and had not been successful. I explained to Mr. Finsall that my daughter had a 100 average and a 98 average for both quarters in both classes. I explained to him that she also had participated in John Hopkins, the SAT program, as a 7th grader. She'd been in enrichment classes through elementary and middle school, that she had just been recognized on the Guilderland website as having been a National Spanish Exam Award winner. I stated that she was currently enrolled in 2 high school courses right now and doing very well. I mentioned that she was one of 2 girls who had been recommended to participate in the Horizon STEM program for girls at Clarkson University in the summer. I tried to mention that she was just recognized as receiving the National Presidential Academic Excellence Award and was accepted into Honor Society this spring. Nothing I said was getting through. The conversation ended with me being frustrated, and I told him if the only criteria used for entry into the honors section was a teacher's recommendation, then I would contact them and get that. I contacted her teachers. It was a very nice conversation. I explained the situation, and they both agreed to contact Mr. Finsall and state that they were in full support of Alyssa's change. A few days later, I received an email from one of the teachers stating that she was sorry. She had tried, however, Mr. Finsall would not be accepting any more students into the honors program. She included his response so that I was able to see the reasoning behind his decision. And finally, she encouraged me to continue advocating for my daughter's appropriate placement in the honors program. At this point, I decided to contact Mr. Laster and found out later that he, Mr. Lutzik, Mr. Finsall, and Dr. Wiles had met a few days later, and the decision around the table had been made to offer the 20-plus students that were in the same situation as my 8th grader an opportunity to compete for 3 seats in a program, in the honors program, by participating in an essay contest on June 2nd. So this is why I'm standing here in front of you tonight. I think the following questions need to be asked. Why was a teacher asked to be the single determining factor in the selection process? Why do these students who have already proven themselves as hardworking, conscientious, and intelligent need to compete for 3 spots against each other to get into an honors 9th grade English class? And I leave you with this point. If we already know that colleges and universities use honors and AP courses in their admissions formulas, which we do, and sometimes they add 0.5 or 1.5 weight onto their final GPA for their applicants, why wouldn't we as a district want all of our students to have the most competitive transcripts possible? Why wouldn't we want the H on a 9th grade English class? Thus, continuing to allow overrides would be the right thing to do if a mistake is made in a recommendation. And allowing students to meet clear quantitative criteria would be the best answer. And I ask you, should the district vision statement be modified to read, shall we provide a rich and rigorous education for all learners upon graduation so that they are poised, capable, and ready to meet the developmental challenges and opportunities of the future, provided that we have enough room for them? Clearly, the recommendation process was flawed, and I'm confident after my conversation with Mr. Laster that it'll be addressed next year. However, the issue is the 20 kids that showed up to take that essay contest on June 2nd. Not 3 kids, 20 plus 20 showed up. And I feel that the school needs to right the wrong. They need to do the right thing for these kids. If they had the fortitude and courage to show up for an essay test that included Regents exam criteria, then they should be able to figure out how to make a spot for them in those sections. And you're going to hear there's not enough room, but I think the school district, I think you could consider possibly an additional 0.2 FTE, a stipend for a teacher. There's ways around it, and I think those kids deserve to be in that class. Not 3, but the ones that showed up that day and spent an hour trying to prove how bright they are. Thank you.
Thank you. Carrie Deenan.
Thank you for letting me share some thoughts with you this evening. Since March 1st, I've been speaking up about the 2 major issues that plague Pine Bush Elementary at this current time. One issue is the often overwhelming capacity problems we have been experiencing with numerous rentals under one roof and the impacts of each individual program on our district programs and students. The other issue has been the large class sizes in our primary grades. These numbers do not include the students of our mainstream BOCES programs that join each classroom in the many grade levels. I am here this evening to ask District Office and the Board of Education to release one of the unassigned positions to Pine Bush to alleviate the large class sizes in either kindergarten or 2nd grade, where we are currently at 23 students per class in both grades. The limit for the primary class size and larger than the other 4 schools. These numbers do not even take into account our BOCES students who join our classrooms or the increases that come each summer from families who move to our area. As a board, you decrease the unassigned positions to 4, and from that there are still remaining FTEs available. If the need arises for more than the remaining assignments, the district will receive a generous amount of money from the elimination of the GEA. These funds were put into the general fund, so it is still accessible. As a board, you previously discussed class size limits and your interest in trying to keep class sizes in check for our primary grades, especially since we are considering increasing inclusive practices. Although we have a need for 2 sections due to our numbers, our building administrator requested the increase for 1 section, as I imagine he recognized the budget constraints the district is still under. Now, as of yesterday, we have been asked to make a Plan A and a Plan B while the situation is watched throughout the summer. Class lists have been delayed, teacher assignments have been delayed, Student folders cannot be filed or filled. Articulation meetings were absolutely canceled. Schedules are not done, and we have about 6 days, I think, remaining. In addition, this wait-and-see plan affects all traveling staff assignments, as well as another school waiting on a position that they also need filled. It's not as easy as just saying, let's wait and see. I have talked since March, about the placement of the daycare in our building next year and the impact the current placement plan will have on our programs and students. Our staff gave you very clear examples in writing of how utilizing a pod where we have Pine Bush students is not in the best interest of our students, and there is a better, more beneficial location for this business down in another pod that was previously used for pre-K. I want to believe that the two situations are not connected. I want to believe that as educators wanting to do what's best for kids, we can look at these numbers for something like kindergarten and know it would be best to add a section for the very young learners. I want to believe that the district would prioritize class size over the placement of a rental program. I want to believe that given all the information that has been presented, our district has built in some flexibility with those rental agreements should our grade level programs grow so we are not displaced from our colleagues. I want to believe that the district would like us to help them through shared decision-making, create an atmosphere where all programs can be successful. And finally, I want to believe that you trust the professionals who work in our building leadership, and consider the information that they have provided and put forward in just the last few months when making these important decisions. I know I've been here before. I've written you a couple correspondence over time, and this may sound redundant because I think I've been talking about this since the budget process and everything has come up since March. But those of you who may not realize, I'm a music teacher. This is not a personal agenda. It does not affect me. But as a building representative, I can recognize the negative impacts that this current plan and the plan of our the high class sizes have on our community, our students, and our facilities. I hope you can reconsider what you heard earlier this evening. The placement, it's just a placement of where we put a daycare. It's giving us a class size that we basically we need it. You've heard this before from other teachers from Gilliland Elementary early in the years. Class size is so important, and you discussed it when we were talking about Julie Costin and everything coming down the road. I don't think it's a simple solution. I think, it's not a magic wand. We don't need anything that drastic to mitigate these issues that exist, and I'm hoping you will consider just some flexibility in changing and doing what's best for our kids. Thank you.
Thank you. Ann Krupe. All right, so that's it. Let's just make sure that it's Serena LeFave. Did she show up? Okay. The next item on our agenda is the consent items of the May 24th meeting, which includes the minutes of the May 24th meeting, the CPSE and CSE recommendations, personnel action, financials, and that's it. So may I have a motion to accept? Barbara, second. Gloria, any discussion or any omissions or additions or deletions you'd like to make from the consent agenda?
Yeah, I just had a comment. On the minutes.
Okay.
Under myself, it says he would like to do a forum to educate the public on Barbara. That's what Barbara said. I didn't say that. So I don't want to take credit for Barbara. So it was stated above that Barbara said a bit on behalf of the Communications Committee.
Okay.
So I didn't. On the policy, I'm sorry.
Policy, yeah.
Okay, so can we make that change? All right.
I'll abstain. I wasn't here.
Okay, so we'll have to amend the motion to accept the consent agenda with the items that Chris pointed out as a correction.
I don't know what we're talking about.
All right? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. There's one abstention. Next item on the agenda is information items. Damon with curriculum and instruction.
very much. I'd like to start by extending congratulations to two Farnsworth Middle School students who are in Maryland competing for a National History Day competition. And the two students are Anish Mupidi of grade 7 for his documentary Evolution, The Key to Unlocking the Origin of Species. Anish won gold at states, earning him his place in nationals. Colin McEnany Ingraham of grade 8 for his exhibit Leave No Trace, Theodore Roosevelt Saving America's Parks for America's People. Colin won silver, earning him his spot at nationals as well. So congratulations to both, and we certainly wish them very well. And I don't know if Sheila has left, but Sheila has been recently awarded as, she's of course our supervisor for art at grades K through 12. She has been chosen as the New York State Art Teachers Association Region 6 Art Educator of the Year. And if you're not aware, Sheila is also a part-time art teacher. So she's doing a phenomenal job in the classroom as well as an administrator, and a celebration to honor Sheila was held on June 3rd at Bellini's Restaurant, so we want to extend congratulations to Sheila, but I think she's part of the room, so we'll do it in spirit. And my third item, just an update for you on some of the inclusion work in the district. On May 12 and 13, Dr. Julie Coster was here again to continue to provide professional development on inclusive school practices. On May 12th, she worked with our co-teaching teams planned for next year at Gilderland High School. On May 13, she spent the day at Altamont Elementary School observing classes, consulting with teachers, and presenting some best practices for the elementary staff at Altamont. Both days were very positive and very well received. The staff at Altamont has in fact requested Dr. Costin's return early in the fall so that she can work with them on strategies to meet the needs of their newest learners at the start of the next school year. And this has been scheduled. Several other related areas of focus that emerged on these days were universal design and co-teaching practices, which will be planned for next year as well. And for this summer, we look forward to following up with many summer curriculum projects related to our efforts to support all learners. Our top priority was time for our high school teams to engage in co-planning and curriculum development related to the efforts to become more inclusive at grade 9. 23 projects were proposed and approved. We also have a team of Gilderland teachers and administrators who will be attending the Inclusive Schools Leadership Institute at Syracuse University in August. 11 teachers and 4 administrators will be attending, and we've also been asked to present our journey during the conference as well. So the work continues. We're excited about the efforts over the summer, and we look forward to many of the curriculum projects that will take place, and of course the Institute as well.
Okay.
Question. As I'm sure you're aware, we've, as a board, received letters asking about more time to develop curriculum for the inclusion model at the high school. And I'm just wondering how you came to the numbers that you came to, which is about half of what the teachers seem to think they
Well,
need.
that's actually, I met with the teacher this morning who sent the letter, and that's actually not accurate, and she understands it fully well. So essentially what happened was one teacher, the teacher who wrote the letter to you, requested 5 full days of curriculum work. The other remaining 22 projects requested 2 days, some 3 days, some just 1 day, some with 2 people, some with 3 people, some with 4 people. So it really was all over the board. I met with Tom and Alex and Mike, and we looked at all of the proposals going forward and tried to equalize and balance them. She fully understood when we met this morning. She just didn't have any of that information at her disposal. So once it was explained to her, she understood that, and we were good. So
Sort of
she
a
sent
money-
a follow-up email today.
A money problem then.
What's that?
It was a money problem. In other
Well, I
words,
mean,
you
we
didn't-
always work within a budget, so, yeah, I mean, to some degree, the budget is constraining, but I think she fully understood that there was a balance of the proposals that went forward, so that essentially all of the proposals could go forward. Yes, hers was proposed at the greatest number of days and had to be pared back a little bit, but it was equivalent to what all of the other projects were in the end as well.
Go ahead, Chris.
Since we're talking about that email, I guess I'll answer it now. I know during the budget time, we were told that all these teachers would have a planning block, an extra planning block, but it made it sound like in that email that's no longer the case. I just want to make sure that is the case.
I'll look at Tom, but they will all have a co-planning block. That's still in place. I think the question that was asked was around relief from duties for some additional planning time above and beyond that co-planning time.
Right.
So, Tom, I don't know if you want to jump in here, but
While he's coming to the microphone, I'll set the stage because during the budget development, Tom had asked for an additional 2 teaching assistant positions that could be used to free up teachers for additional planning, and they did not make it into the budget. Tom has recently made a request for them through the request for additional unassigned process, which we do for TAs as well. And the answer is just not yet. When he has the schedule done and sees where there is need, we will address the need. But at this point, it's kind of a hypothetical need, not an actual need.
I remember that was taken off the list, because a few of us wanted to do it, but we were told that it was not necessary because they were getting a block for planning, so that's why I'm just confused now.
Well, they have the block for planning. This is additional beyond the block for planning.
Right, there is co-planning every single day for all of the co-teachers. So a special ed teacher and a general ed teacher have a co-planning together, their normal planning time. They have that. What the email was asking about was in addition. So instead of having a study hall, I would have additional planning time, either for my other classes or to work with my co-teacher.
Now, from a practical standpoint, particularly where it's a program in its infancy, that to me seems like a need, versus a want versus a need type of thing. So you're trying to still get this extra time for them through the
unassigned process.
Unassigned.
Yeah, and I'd like to clarify, I put in for the TAs. I don't recall ever at any point saying I didn't want or need the TAs. I think there was some discussion at the board level, and you guys kind of said, okay, they have they have some common planning time together. But I agree exactly with what Barbara said. I think particularly for a first year, for some of the curriculum issues that some people will be facing, some of the time that they need, if we can do it, I really think that it would be beneficial, particularly for ENL. And I've kind of prioritized, and I've shared this with the co-teachers too. The way that ENL is structured, it's they're working with multiple teachers in sometimes in multiple subject areas. So even without the TAs, I'm going to try and find a way where I can at least relieve them from duties so that they're able to work with their co-teachers more than just a common planning time that they have.
Right. Good.
But to be clear, it's not off the table by any stretch. It's just we're fine-tuning the plan.
I would just say that myself, and I think a few others would have voted for it, but it was taken off the list because it was deemed not necessary. That's
At the time.
At the time.
Yeah.
That's what we were told, or we would have voted for it.
Well, I think we came to that conclusion based on the fact that they would have planning every day. I
Right.
mean, that to me. But if other things are coming up, we have the flexibility of being able to deal with that.
Yeah, we're almost done with TA schedules through special education, and we'll have a better idea then. We are having some difficulty getting teaching assistants, and the interviews are being planned and taking progress. We've had several interviews over the end of last year trying to recruit some TAs and getting some TAs on the list too. So, it's something we can do, but we just wanted to see where we landed also as far as staffing. But I'd be in full support of relieving some people from duties to do that. I think teachers can be better used working with each other and collaborating as opposed to being in a study hall.
Absolutely. Especially, as I said, the first year of the program, it's going to be tough getting it off the ground, and having a planning time for a regular teacher with a regular classroom is one thing, but now you have 2 teachers trying to work with kids at different levels. I hope you get them.
I guess I have a follow-up question, because I'm a little concerned when I hear what everybody's saying here. If this inclusion is a new process that we're going to do, how are we going to ensure that we have adequate planning time so that it's done right and it's successful? Because the answers I'm hearing aren't inclusive or aren't really forceful enough, in my opinion, that say, okay, that we're dedicated to this and we're going to do it. It's only if we have the time and the money, and I don't think that's the right approach to go into this. That's what it sounds like to me. I don't know if that's...
We already put it in place. I mean, all those things are in the schedule. The planning time is there for people to work together. It's there. So, I mean, we're not being iffy about it. We committed to this. We spent a lot, I felt we committed to it.
I'm unsure about it right now.
Well, I think
If
at the
we
high
have
school level, we're committed to it. We've spent an enormous amount of time hand scheduling students, meeting with teachers, meeting with the inclusion committee, preparing all of this stuff. We've got a lot of teachers that are very excited about this opportunity. But I do think, as some people on the board have mentioned, I do think that anytime you start something new, there needs to be a little bit kind of extra effort put into it, a little bit of extra planning, a little bit of extra preparation.
I would agree with that.
Yeah.
And I think all the professional development we've been doing all year, I mean, bringing Julie in, working with people, giving people confidence along the way. And yeah, once it's in place and you're in the classroom, other things are going to come up. And so we're prepared, we have some opportunities there, but I don't get a sense, Alan, that we're wishy-washy on this. I mean, did anybody else feel that way? I just feel
I'm
we're
not saying we're
committed.
wishy-washy, I just want to make sure that we're committed to it, because it didn't sound like...
Sounds like we're,
Ah,
me.
okay.
When our teachers are done working with Dr. Costin, they're energized, they're very excited. The last meeting that we had with her, she had some very practical case studies and some examples. She allowed teachers to work together, and they left, that training very enthusiastic, very enlightened about some of the tools that they would have in their toolkit, based upon real examples that we worked on that day.
Okay, well, thanks.
Could I just highlight one of those examples, Tom? The thing that really stood out to me in that day on May 12th with the high school co-teaching teams was an activity that she facilitated around review and analysis of actual Guilderland student IEPs, and the guidance that she provided in how teachers can actually read the IEPs and focus on student strengths as opposed to just the deficits and the weaknesses. I saw so many light bulbs go off in that room that day. I mean, so many people looked at it and said, wow, that is just an entirely different way to look at an IEP, which is typically viewed as a deficit document. And the takeaways from that was something that was extremely powerful, and I think it was a breakthrough moment for many people who were in the room that day. So I would echo Tom. I mean, the energy leaving the room, that was when I had people lining up and requesting to be able to go to the Institute and continuing the work and continuing the focus. There will be bumps in the road. I mean, there's no doubt about the fact that there will be bumps, as there is any time you start something new. But I will say, from my perspective, that the work that the high school team has done at this point, not just around creating inclusive classrooms, but being thoughtful and deliberate about student placements, about staff assignments, about partnerships. I mean, the thought and the energy and the time that has gone into that, I think, is second to nothing that I have seen in this district before, certainly not at the high school level. So I will say openly, I have all the confidence in the world in this work. I think the commitment is there. I think it is one of the most important efforts that we have undertaken in this district in a long time, frankly. And I think there are a lot of kids who have been, I don't want to say underserved, but I think underserved, frankly, by not thinking inclusively and not bringing them to the level that they can be. So,
okay. Thanks. You had, Barbara?
I don't know if this is an appropriate time to bring it up, seeing that we have Tom here and Damien here, or if you want to hold it for the discussion period. But the inclusion model, counterbalancing, how am I going to say this? The parent that came, Mrs. Landry, about 20 kids being denied placement in an honors program. And to me, that is almost criminal in nature if there are that many kids that would qualify. But as I said, I don't know if this is when it's time for the criteria. My feeling, and has been echoed by some folks, saying that the reason why we can't service these kids, and she made reference to our mission, that we want to challenge every child. And should we change our statement, and if there's room, or whatever. And that sort of got to me, because here you have kids who want to succeed, but if we do that, what I'm hearing is that we upset the balance in these inclusion classes. And so we're sort of pitting unnecessarily maybe one group against the other. But I guess my question to you, if you want to do it now, why aren't these kids being given an honors class?
Well, the short answer would be that they were not recommended for the honors class. We have always had a recommendation process. It does use criteria. Now, you can...
So what can you share with us what the criteria are?
Sure. They must have a grade point average above 90. the work ethic, the quality of student work, the ability to reflect and seek assistance, initiative, creativity, organization and study habits, communication skills, literacy, the ability to work independently, and perseverance.
I just have I guess a story about that. Because way back when, overrides were not really a problem, but my son was recommended for Regents English, and it's funny, he was recently home, and he just reminded me that, he did the override into honors. He just reminded me he got the English Department Senior Award. He also majored in English in college. So, I think, and his friend, he also reminded me, was also, recommended for Regents kind of aspirationally, and he graduated first in his class. He's right now working on his doctorate in applied physics at Harvard. So, this is kind of like where I feel like sometimes these recommendations, I don't know where they're coming from, but these kids are 13 years old, and they're in these classes, and maybe they just had a bad year, but it's a prediction. It's not like a recommendation is a prediction, and predictions are not always accurate. So there has to be some other, this essay process really bothered me, because it's like, what do you, if you have all these kids that are willing to write an essay, and you're saying no to most of them, what message are you sending? What message are you sending to them?
Well, there's two points, I think, is you're right. Kids grow up, kids develop their skills that they have. If you're not in a 9th grade honors class, there is nothing to preclude you from working hard, challenging yourself, getting outstanding grades, and getting that recommendation and moving up to a 10 honors class or an AP class in an upper grade level. So it isn't that you don't have an opportunity to do that. I'm working in a bit of a deficit because I don't really know those children. I'm going by information that we get. That's one thing. But I do want to be clear that everybody has the opportunity to continue at any grade level to really work hard and, to move up and challenge yourself in another level as you move through, the high school at any point that you can do that.
Yeah, but sometimes what happens, students who are, if they're under-challenged, sometimes instead of working really hard, they kind of disengage. And you can actually have, like them not doing as well as they could. Because, I've also actually had experienced that in my own schooling, and so, I almost, got bad grades because I wouldn't just stop paying attention in class. And so, it's kind of hard. You're making an assumption that if you tell kids, no, not this year, but maybe next year if you work really hard, maybe yes, maybe no, but it's not necessarily a reflection of ability. It's hard to tell. Is it that they're not doing well in the class because they don't have the ability, or because they're under-challenged? I don't know how you tell the difference, but it can be an issue.
Yeah, I don't disagree, and I think there's some philosophical arguments that are coming in here, and even some of the parents that I have spoken with about the overrides, they say, they make comments like, I want my child to be in with kids that can work cooperatively, that are intrinsically motivated, that are, and the list goes down, the list continues. But I guess if you don't have a criteria for how you get into that, then how do you ensure, to the best of your ability, there are always exceptions, how do you ensure that that is the group of kids that in fact are in there, that are working together? So, we can certainly have a school or a system where just kind of anybody that wants to go into any class can go into that. That has not traditionally been what happens here. There have always been overrides that did not get into a particular class or a particular section. It really depends upon how the schedule falls. So some years, we might be able to get 15, maybe 20 people that override, which might be all of the overrides, into a particular class that they requested. Other years, because of the way that the schedule falls, it might be 3, it might be a small number that we're able to do that with. So, that's kind of the situation that we're at right now. We did have 3, and when I say, a limited amount, that's really putting class sizes all the way to the top, and then you start getting into conflicts and scheduling problems when you're trying to do that too.
But, I mean, you probably could have another section with the kids that want it if you reduce the class size a little bit across the sections, because, I mean, it's not like you're adding new kids. These are kids that are going to be in some class, right? So you're not adding new kids to your mix, you're just changing them into a different class.
No, I think you are. I think we're talking about adding new kids is what you're, we're talking anywhere from 20 to, 3 as some of the numbers that I've heard tonight. Those would be new kids that we would be adding.
Right, but you wouldn't necessarily have to add a teacher, because they're not like new to the 9th grade. They're already going to be in a class. It's just which class, right?
But if you take those kids out of the ninth grade experiment here, then you tip over the proportions of those students that were known as core students versus the region students.
That would definitely happen. So if you collapse a section, there are a couple of things that happen when you do that is, yes, the ratios that we've very carefully hand scheduled would be mixed somewhat. And any time that you go from, say, 12 sections to 11 sections, something along those lines, then you're also running a higher chance of having some conflicts with the students that you're trying to reschedule and shuffle around in those sections. So where we might have an overall percentage of, 30%, we range anywhere from 18% to 40%, because we're also dealing with children. We're not dealing with widgets or some kind of a manufacturing. So when we talk about IEPs or 504s or some of those distinctions, those can be very, very different. One child that has that classification versus another child that has that classification can have extremely different needs and require extremely different supports. So to kind of use percentages, it is helpful in giving you a large picture and a broad picture, but it doesn't really show you the makeup of the classroom, and that's why we hand schedule. And the reason that we have some of the higher percentages and then the lower percentages, it has to do with the scheduling and how they proceed in the classes that they take, starting from science. And that's all children, starting from their science class, which meets 3 times. So that knocks basically 2 blocks out right there. And then if they take music and art and some of those other things, it really restricts your schedule. So you see some kids only being able to take certain things at certain times, and that's why you get some of the higher percentages, and that's why you have some of the lower percentages.
So it's
Can I
hard
just interrupt
because
for
of...
just a minute? I'm not sure we're really going to solve this tonight here. I think we're going to sit back and debate this. I think what I'm hearing from at least the left-hand side of the table is that they want to hear how we're going to work with this honor system and this criteria that we have for putting student in there, and also the overrides, how many overrides and how we're managing the overrides. That's what I hear is the issue. At least that's what I heard when I heard the public comment. It's not whether we should be doing it or not. I think we all at this table agree that we should be probably doing as much honors as we possibly can. It might not be feasibly possible. So I think,
well, it's
again,
feasibly
we can sit here and
possible
argue this all.
It's feasibly possible if that's your desire.
I guess the point I'm trying to
Certainly
make is that I don't think we're going to solve this tonight. I think what we need to do is come up with maybe some ideas or some things that we want
I have
the
an
district
idea,
office
but
team.
I wanted to ask him.
Okay, yeah, go ahead.
In years past, what a child could do if because it was mostly because of scheduling, that they couldn't get into, say, an honors English, they could work with the teacher and do some extra projects and still have an honors designation on their transcript. Is that a possibility for this group of kids for next year?
Well, we'd have to distinguish what group we're talking about. So, it is a possibility. The A program does that also. They give that honors designation. But that would be something I would have to work with the teachers on. It would depend where those kids were and what kids we were talking about. 20-some kids showed up to take the exam, but there were close to 50 overrides. So we're talking about 20 kids that showed up, but is that because they showed up to try and showed interest, is that then where we're going to draw the line? Or is it everybody who requested an override? And that's, I think at some point you have to have some criteria. You have to say, here's the line. And if in fact we want to proceed the way we have proceeded in the past.
Is that common, that you have 50 overrides per year, or override requests per year? Is this higher than usual? I mean, because that seems like a lot.
It varies from year to year. I wouldn't say that it's, an extremely large amount, but it's smaller some years, larger some others. Some years we're, 15 or 20, and we have a section, and the way that it balances, we're able to get, 15 of the kids in, 5 may not get in. It really comes down to scheduling to some extent. We do build to accommodate all of the kids that did get recommended. There was a mistake in the beginning of the scheduling process, as was mentioned by Ms. Landry, and there were some kids that were initially told, no, you were recommended, but you can't get in. That issue was corrected. Those kids, we did open another section. We got those kids in. But it's still only left just a few alternatives for overrides to get in.
Just
Two more questions, okay? Because we're going to be here all night. And
No, but I have
Go ahead, Chris.
I just have a couple of questions. First question is, what is the difference between honors and regents? Like, would I know, or maybe I should look this way. If I walked in, honestly, if I walked into a class, I was never smart enough to be an honors, but if I walked in the classroom today and you didn't tell me, and I walked into an honors class, or I walked into a regents class, would I truly know the difference? Honestly.
I would think it would depend on the class you walk into, but on average, I would say probably not.
Okay. So
They have to cover the same material.
Right. So I think where we're headed, please correct me if I'm wrong, is eventually you're going to combine all three core regents and honors. It's all going to be one class. If I had to guess, this is what I see as the future. So my question is, I don't think it's fair for these students maybe that if we're going to do this in the future, is there something that an extra project or something that regents kids could do if they wanted to in order to get the honors credit?
I think that would be something that we would have to have a discussion about. I believe that you're right, that we've already talked in our committee meetings and everything about trying to decide what would that look like? How could an honors student demonstrate herself or himself within a regents class to get that designation? We have somewhat of a model in the A program and the former X program where they have been doing that for years and years. But that might look a little bit different in a regents classroom because the approach is a little bit different.
And it's up to the students if they want to do the extra project. And I think the honors kids should also have to do a certain project. And then if they do that project and they do it successfully, then they get honors credit. If not, then they get regents credit. So,
yeah, the work that we would have to do would have to be consistent from teacher to teacher to teacher.
Right.
And we would have to establish what would that look like? What would they be doing? And we just haven't had that conversation yet in order to do that. I'm not opposed to it.
Is there a possibility of having that conversation for this group of kids for next year?
It'll be a tight timeline. I mean, we only have a few days left. We could start next year and have some of those conversations. Again, I'd have to determine what kids we're talking about. We'd have to find out where they are, what teachers are impacted, and then have conversations.
I think if they're willing to do a certain project, that you come up with the criteria, and I think honors and regents classes both have the opportunity, then they can get this honors credit. I think then that resolves
You
it.
have to find a teacher willing to evaluate that work. I mean, so
Colleen had a question. Go ahead.
So my question is the same as Chris's. So Miss Langley's child doesn't, I think you said her name was Alyssa, doesn't make a ninth grade honors. That's what we're hearing. So because, to follow up on Chris's point, so you collapse core next year at 10. There's not going to be additional honors opportunities for kids who didn't do honors in ninth grade. I mean, that's what happens. If you don't start honors 9, yes, I know it's possible, but holding out hope that these kids are going to get in 10th grade honors, English or whatever the thing is, I think is a false hope, because you're going to do the collapsing, as Chris says, in 10th grade. Then when this child is an 11th grader, there's more collapsing. So there's not going to be additional honors opportunities. And I also want to say that, back in the day when Miss Mackey was teaching Global 9, there was a syllabus for Regents, and it was this, and then there was a syllabus for honors, and you sure as head did a lot more work for the honors. So the difference between honors and Regents, and I'm leaving tonight so I can say whatever I want, is that it depends on the teachers, and if people are honest with each other, that's true. Some of them, there's no distinction. There might be 1 or 2 projects, maybe 2 projects a semester. With Miss Mackey, wherever you are, thank you for teaching my kids how to write papers, but, that's the bottom line.
If I could jump in here, I think what this conversation makes crystal clear is that we have quite a bit of work to do around what does honors mean, what criteria should be used to determine how students get into that program. We haven't really had that framed in a concrete and specific way ever. And so now we're at this point when we are talking about all 9th graders. And our mission statement says all students have the opportunity, and we do have room for all students. It's a function of what happens in our classrooms. And, I have never seen so much student by student, individual by individual work having been done to create these 9th grade sections from our incoming 8th grade. I mean, the middle school and the high school spent hours and hours and hours trying to create balanced learning environments to serve the needs of all kids well. So, can we create another section? Sure we can. But it will disrupt 11 other sections of students. And so, part of what we're saying is that we may value those 11 sections differently than the one we're creating. And that's what we're talking about tonight. And so, that's where the board is. I mean, you need to reflect the values of your community, our community, and that's what we're talking about. It's a very hard conversation.
Can I just make one point about that before Alan cuts me off? And that's why I wanted to bring up my second point is, I would be with you if you told me that in each one of those 11th or 12 sections, there were 4 or 5 non-Regent students moving into the Regents group, because that's what Dr. Costin basically has indicated. But in some cases, there's 9 non-Regent students based on the percentages.
Where there is a co-teacher.
Right.
So there's higher percentages where we have 2 adults in that room all the time. So we have class sizes in the low 20s with 2 teachers. So, I mean, on some levels, those students will have twice the level of attention for differentiation and for opportunities. I mean, well, that's where we have a fundamental philosophical question to make. I mean, can we make a new section? Yes, very easily. The question is do you want us to make a new section? And what that means for the remaining 11 sections of 9th graders coming in, some of whom will now have a much greater balance of students with needs than we have right now.
Well, I think that's where the issue is, because in some of those classrooms, you probably don't want to get to that 9-person level. You really want it to be at the 4 or 5-person level.
Right, when there's 1 teacher in the classroom, and in the model we have right now, we are very close to that,
So if you take kids out of those classrooms, then that percentage of 40% is going to go even.
Well, it could be. There's no, I know you sent an email about a simple chart, and I'm like, oh my God, there is no simple chart.
I'm a budget guy. To me,
because
chart and PowerPoint.
yeah, every child that you move there's an impact on where they can go into another section that may put them in Section 1 or Section 9, depending on the other courses that they've selected. So we can't predict in all 11, unless we redo the schedule, what those actual percentages will be. That's why we talk in averages. But that's the fundamental question here. This is not hard to do from a technical perspective. It is very hard to do from a philosophical perspective.
I think there's a middle ground that we can.
Yes, the middle ground, I think, is to allow those kids to get honors credit by doing extra work, and they would then either prove themselves or not prove themselves as freshmen, and then be able to get into sophomore year.
Can I chime in for a second here?
Yeah.
Believe it or not, I'm very excited about this conversation. I know it sounds a little bit strange, but
He is, believe me.
I've been in this district for 22 years, and I cannot think of a year that has passed when we have not had some disappointed parents and students because they didn't make it into this or that or acceleration or honors or whatever it happens to be. And I'll speak specifically to honors because I think we're really touching upon a very fundamental philosophical question about what is honors. And as long as we define honors as a separate space or a separate box in which you place kids, we will always run into the box being filled. We will always run into that. That will never fail. But Barbara, you touched upon something that I've been kind of wrestling and floating the idea with quite a bit, that maybe honors is not a box. I mean, maybe it's not a space. There's no regulation, there's no rule that's saying that we have to define it that way. Maybe it is an opportunity. Maybe it is a credential. Maybe it is something that students work toward, as opposed to looking backward and saying they did X, Y, and Z in 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, therefore you will or will not be afforded that opportunity. And when we do that, inevitably there are going to be kids who are denied the opportunity. And philosophically, I don't think that's right. I think that there are, as Kathy touched upon, inevitably some students who maybe had the will and the energy and the passion to be able to do it, but for whatever reason, in 8th grade, they had a bad month or performed badly on this test, and now their door is shut on them. But that, as Tom said, when you look at it or define honors as a box that you have to place X number of students in, there's a maximum number that you will inevitably be able to get into that box. And as long as we look at it that way, this conversation is going to come up over and over and over again. It will happen every single year. It has happened every year that I've been in this district. And I think this is screaming for us to step back and redefine, or at least define, what is honors. Is it a separate course, a separate curriculum, a separate location? If that's what we're comfortable with, then this is a conversation that will continue inevitably, because there will be some disappointed people every single year. If we look at it differently, then maybe we can do something different where we expand the opportunities for kids, but at the same time allow them to legitimately earn that H on the transcript that Mrs. Landry spoke of, which I do think is reflective of what we stand by as a mission as the school district. So I personally am a bit excited by this conversation. I think it's something that has some opportunity for us to think a little bit differently maybe than what the traditional view is, and expand the opportunities for kids going forward. But it's going to take time. It's going to take a lot of conversation with teachers. I personally don't think it's something that we can pull off before the start of the next school year. But Barbara, I mean, your idea of, can we find a middle ground, I think is maybe something that we could pull off for the next school year. But
We've done it before, though. I mean,
Exactly.
I remember my daughter taking Regents Earth Science and doing some projects to earn honors credit. And she didn't actually finish all her projects, so she didn't actually earn it.
I think we can pull off. I do
But
think
yeah,
we can
but that used to be something, I mean, I don't know if it's still available, but that was definitely something
That's, I
that
think,
has
the
been
middle ground that
available.
Barbara's suggesting. And I do
Yeah,
think there
but
is-
I just wanted to say we've done it. I mean,
But not on a full scale, not on a district-wide or a system-wide
But
scale.
here,
I think that's
for
the
this
bigger
year, you're only talking these 30 kids or 50 kids or whatever, giving them that opportunity. I think that would make the parents feel better, the kids feel better. And what one of the parents wrote to us is that colleges do look for that H on your transcript. And, if we could, they could almost be sort of test pilots for a grander vision for next year, for the, 2 years down the road, where an honors course, then you'd have the opportunity to have even more kids together, And yet if a kid has enough energy and enthusiasm to take on an extra project or two, go for it. But I just don't want to lose those kids for next year if we can possibly, as I said, this has been done over the years in English, social studies, science, and kids have gotten their honors credit by working with the teacher doing extra work. So I just hope that the rest of the board feels the same way, that, try to work it out over the summer, that these kids are not, restricted.
I think there is a short-term solution, but I think there's a longer-term conversation.
Yes, I totally agree.
Yeah, I agree
Christina had a
with Marie and Damien about the larger conversation about what's the distinction between honors and regents. But for the current group, I don't know if the project, like an honors project, is really going to, that might be maybe a middle ground, but I think if there's time to still come up with a solution, so there could be another section if possible. I know Kathy, Barb, and I talked about, like, philosophically, we believe in, if they have the opportunity to take the honors class, because it's not just doing, a project, it's not just doing a certain level of work, it's the environment of the whole class as a unit, and you lose that when you just say, oh, you're just doing an honors project and that's what you get. I'm not saying that that it's going to be possible, but I think that's what the ideal solution is, and we should try and afford the students that opportunity first.
As a board, I'm not sure if we have that power.
Of course you do.
What?
Sure, of course
add
you
a
do.
section?
Marie said it's possible if that's the direction we want it to go, but you have to weigh that against the philosophy of the other 11 sections and those 11 times 20 kids that will be affected when you pull out those other kids. So that's the balancing
Be
act.
somewhat cognizant of that, because again, you're making a lot of exceptions, and like Marie said, you got 11 sections, and you're going to create a special section 12 at maybe the detriment of those other 11 sections. So you're on a fine balance there, where you're going to have to make sure that we take into account the consideration of all the children, not just the honors kids, but all the children that have to get educated in the 9th grade. And we just, it's a bigger
Well, like
discussion
Colleen
than
said,
tonight.
Like Colleen said, once you're in that track, it's very hard to move up to a different track. I went to school here too, and work in education, I know.
I'm not
that's what
disagreeing with that. I'm
happens.
just telling you that
Yeah,
you're, you're coming up with a special class of people
right.
at the cost of 11 other sections. That could be detrimental. I'm not saying it is.
it's easy, or, we can definitely do it, but I feel like if there's an opportunity to try, I know it's going to be, obviously, it sounds like a lot of work, that we should afford them that opportunity.
Well, I know my simple chart's not simple, but I think you have to look at it that way, because maybe then you would have to also add a section in the regions too, to counterbalance, to make sure you have those.
Well, our class sizes are already low 20s there, so
The lower your class sizes go, the higher the...
Well, you're going to be combining some, right? Because once you take, I don't know how many kids, that's why I don't have the number.
Finite number of kids, so the more that you pull out, the lower the level's going to go, the higher your percentages are going to skew, basically.
Right, so some of them might have to be co-taught or, something.
I would just like to say one thing too, that, Miss Landry and some of the other people, but particularly Miss Landry, she's the only one that spoke tonight. She is speaking, I believe she said her daughter had 198, and she's, a great student and all of that, and I wouldn't dispute that at all, but I would say that that's not indicative of every single person that filled out an override either. So there are students who have much lower grades, who, the teachers did make comments about as far as participation, work ethic, and things along those lines. And again, I don't, it is a recommendation and a guess, but, Sammy, you talked about that atmosphere. And again, if you lose that atmosphere if it's just, anybody who wants to override or try honors gets in. And if you're going to do something like that, in my opinion, then why not just have everybody together and then determine what that student looks like? What is an honors student as opposed to what's an honors place? That's just my opinion.
I had to say 198, I don't know how you got end up in honors, but it seems pretty surprising to me. And all the accomplishments.
Yeah, I mean, she said her student was on the school's website for Spanish award or whatever it was.
Johns Hopkins.
Yeah.
Johns
Yeah,
Hopkins.
that seems insane to me.
That you
I
can't,
mean, fundamentally, that just seems wrong. Like we're punishing them.
I don't have a solution for next year, but I do agree with Damien's comment that we have had our head in the sand about this forever. I mean, my kids are all out of this school, but we've been not talking about honors and about what that means for years. And we've been letting teachers define it. We've been letting teachers at every thing. You know, the other thing too, as a school board member all these years, I've had people come to me and say, you know, my child is a 7th grader, he's a prodigy, he should be taking advanced algebra in 7th grade. And you know, my response is we don't really do a lot of tracking at the middle school. I mean, it's against our philosophy. We offer the advanced courses in 8th grade. But I mean, there is then the hope that when one gets to the high school, that there are some honors opportunities available. But I think you guys should go back. Again, I don't have a solution for this particular issue and these particular kids, but I think it should start a larger discussion about what is meaningful honors work, whether it's done in the context of one of these classes with extra projects or whether it's an honors section. But I don't think that that's something we've defined at any level here.
I was just wondering, I happened to print out the school profile form because it has a lot of, it lists all these classes on it.
Sure.
You know, and it says, I mean, for honors, at least the way we designate it there, it says honors courses are designed to challenge students through in-depth study in the discipline. At least that's how we describe them. And I was kind of wondering, I know I'd kind of forgotten we have the combined English social studies classes.
That's the A program that I mentioned.
How does that, I mean, is that part of the inclusive sections, or how does all this work together? It seemed, when I looked at the form, it seemed a little more complicated.
Yeah, well, the A is maybe inclusive in a different way. There really is no recommendation process for A. It does tend to be more project-based. They do some different materials, so the literature might be a little different than what would happen in a Regents or an honors class outside of the A program, and that was true when it was the X program too. That is more of a project-based, like you have been talking about. They would have to complete, and then they get an honors designation for that. It was that way when it was the X program for many, many years, and then when it changed over to the A program, we kept that. And again, that's because that had been in place. There had been discussions with those teachers, with the curriculum that they had, and they just continued that. It hasn't been a practice in the social studies and English outside of that. You are exactly right. It was done in earth science prior to me coming here for a number of years, and then it was stopped. I don't know whether it had to do with the acceleration at the middle school or what the reason was for that, but we did stop doing that.
Yeah, now they take biology, right? They used to take double science. Like, they'd come early for earth science if they took it, and then they'd take science again, so it was a very long day for those students.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, all right, well yeah, because I was looking at this and I was thinking, like, what happened with, because I know that we've been talking so much about 12 sections of Regents, and I assume that that's 12 sections of English and 12 sections of social studies.
Correct.
So
there's 16 total sections, but 12 of the Regents level.
And
of the Regents level.
And I assume that all the classes are not identical in English and in social studies.
What do you mean identical?
Well, like you're not putting the same kids in like across the classes, the same groupings is what I'm saying. Yeah.
Some are similar because they're based on need, so there may be some similarities. Also, for the co-teaching sections, there are similarities. So any of those students that would require direct consultant and a co-teacher there, so that will be a very similar section. The general ed population might be a lot different in those classes though too. So it's a mix, but there will be some similarities. I think that's true right now because of the constraints that any schedule has on it. I'm not just going to use ours, but again, if you take a particular science, and so we have some kids that are accelerated, we have some kids that aren't. So we have some 9th graders that are taking 10th grade classes. explain what that does to a schedule, but it does then kind of limit your other selections. So do some of the electives that students take. So regardless of inclusion, we've always had a group that tends to go with a group. The music kids that participate in 2 ensembles, they will often be in some similar classes with each other, as long as they're in the same grade level. There is always a mix that kind of tends to be together. It's just by the nature of the classes that they select.
Right, because music's only once.
Right.
So anytime you have a section, it only meets once.
Yeah.
It affects the rest of the schedule.
Right. And so if they happen to take the same science, then there's four blocks out of 8 that are already spoken for, and that limits the other selections.
Right, so, and it gets more complicated the higher the grade, right? Because as the kids move through high school, they're taking more of a diverse selection of courses because they have more options, I guess I would say.
They could be taking more singletons, and that could make it more complicated. But as they get, the freshman schedule is probably the tightest schedule. They have the fewer options because it's the first year. They need to get some certain things under their belts. Then in 10th grade, you start with your first AP class that is offered and some other selections that they have. And then your electives broaden too, because you've already got studio art, as your background, so you can expand to some different arts that might have that as a prerequisite. Yeah, I wouldn't disagree with what you're saying.
Right, so I just wondered, as far as like continuing the inclusive practice throughout the grades, does it become like very challenging? Like if you wanted to do it, say, in 11th and 12th grade, I mean, how would you?
Which is the plan.
How would you do that?
Well, we haven't really started the discussion. In our discussions about 9th grade, obviously, the following year has come up and what would that look like? But we haven't gone really in depth with that. We've spent a lot of time and energy on trying to make the 9th grade successful. If 9th grade isn't successful, then 10th, what's the point in talking about 10th grade? So we've really focused our energies there. As we move into next year, we had 2 things that we're slated to talk about, and that was the honors that, has been a discussion for a while, but there's, a change in leadership and stuff. So I think next year will be a strong focus on that. And then also, what does the 10th grade inclusion model look like? It might be easier in some ways because we've already formed a game plan for 9th grade, and those students will just move up. Yes, they might have some more selections, but in their core areas where they really require that support, at least that work will, to some extent, have been done for us. We've also expanded some of the business offerings for some students with needs also, so they have a wider selection than they used to also.
I think respectfully, this is an important topic, but we need to move on. It's 8:30, and we have an extremely long agenda.
I would agree. So can we move to the next item?
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Old business, Neil?
One item this evening, it's a construction project update. So the second summer of work associated with the $18.5 million capital construction project is set to begin. Clifford Nooney, along with representatives from CS Arch and Turner Construction, have attended faculty meetings at all schools to inform staff of the work that will be occurring this summer in each of the buildings. So from now through the beginning of July, we have work in the following buildings. Guilderland High School complex, we're going to start our auditorium renovations, which includes the seating, lighting, sound system, and handicapped access, replacement of the east tennis courts, and our football field and track light pole and light replacement project. At the middle school, we're preparing for a technology shop floor replacement. We'll be doing some exterior roof soffit repairs, and we'll also be replacing the electrical switchgear. And at the maintenance building, we're replacing the steel in the overhead doors. So that's what we have going on for the next few weeks. And then obviously we'll have a lot more work going on once school lets out completely. Go ahead.
Okay, my first item is a reminder about the many more end-of-year activities. We've had a number during the month of June, many celebrations. But we have our grade 5 moving up days coming up, is it next next week.
Yep.
So we have Wednesday at Altamont at 9 a.m. and Judy Slack will be there. On Tuesday, June 21st is the Guilderland Moving Up Day, and Barbara Frederigo will be there. And then we have 3 more on June 22nd. Linwood's program will begin at 8:30, and Seema Rivera will be there. At 10 o'clock, Pine Bush will have its ceremony, and Kathy Barber will be there. And at 8:30, Westmere will have its ceremony, and Colleen O'Connell will be there. My goal that day is to make 15 minutes of all of them. So we'll see how that goes. And then Tuesday evening, June 22nd at 7 p.m. in the high school gym, we will have our Moving Up Day ceremony for our 8th graders who are rising to 9th grade. And Alan Simpson and Barbara Frederigo will be our board members there. You will be there?
Yeah, and I think I told them yes.
And we'll add Judy Slack and Gloria Toll-Hilt. And then on Saturday, June 25th at 4 p.m., we will have our commencement ceremony for our graduating seniors at Albany SEFCU Arena. Our guest speakers will be Lisa Whitman, social studies teacher at Guilderland High School, and then attending board members Alan Simpson, who will be assisting with the handing out of diplomas, Christine Hayes, Barbara Frederigo, Seema Rivera, Judy Slack, and Gloria Toll-Hilt. So we'll have a nice crowd on stage. Okay, my next item is a follow-up to a request that I received from, or an offer actually, I should call it, from, it won't open here. Just one line. Well, I can speak to this from my comments on Friday. About 3 weeks ago, John Yagalski, who is the interim district superintendent at Cap Region BOCES, called me to say that they are offering a half-price special for 9th grade students who would be interested in going to Tech Valley High School. As you know, we ask 8th grade students if they would be interested, and then there's a lottery if it would be, if there are more than one student. So we had 6 students this year, and I would like to be able to say that we can send an additional student to the program next year. The cost would be minimal for a couple reasons. It's half price, plus we have about 50% aid on that cost. Plus, it's a 5-year average, so that 2,000 and change would get spread out over 5 years. And we currently have 2 seniors in the program for next year. So we'll have 2 people moving off the roster, so this won't have a long-term implication. So I would like to be able to go back to the middle school and say we can ask the next person on the list if he or she would like to attend Tech Valley High School. But I would like your blessing before I do that.
I say go for it.
Go for it. Yeah, I think it's great.
All right, I'm going to skip the next item and go on to an update on our self-contained classrooms. I think Chris asked for kind of an update on where we stand, and I believe we're going to talk mostly about Linwood Elementary School because there are no substantive changes at Altima Elementary School. I'll look to Peter for a major shake. We're not making any changes there.
We're managing everything.
Yes, we are. Very good, Peter. But at Linwood, we had, during the budget discussion, some ideas about how to begin the process for thinking about our self-contained classrooms differently. And so what I'll share now is really no different than what we talked about then. Our 4th and 5th grade program will actually, I'll use the word dissipate. The 5th grade students are moving up to the middle school, and we have 4 remaining 4th grade students who will be in 5th grade next year, and they will be fully included in Tim Fry's classroom, and Lauren Whipple will be co-teaching in that classroom to support those children.
Is that all day?
All day. Then we have 2 other self-contained classrooms at Linwood Elementary School that will remain intact for next year in our effort to move slowly. However, we're thinking about how we use time during that day and how we pair up students in the self-contained classrooms with the general education classroom to give them more opportunities to be mainstreamed with their non-disabled peers. So that is a function of Alicia working through the magic of the master schedule and scheduling the special areas. But Heather Kennedy's classroom will be paired up with a 1st grade classroom, and Lisa Corrado's classroom will be paired up with Chris White's, and they will work together to provide students with some opportunities to be fully included. So that's essentially where we are at this point.
And the kids that would go into kindergarten.
Alicia, the question is about kindergarten. Incoming kindergarten students?
We have a team. Which kindergarten, you say?
General ed?
General ed. Or
So incoming kindergarten students who would have been placed in EDI.
So as of now, I could, well, you want to speak to that? Okay.
I'll speak. I'm Kelly Dioldi. I'm the instructional administrator for special education. Currently, we don't have any incoming kindergarten slated for the EDI program. We have some students who are going to, all students are going to their home schools. They will be included in consultant teacher direct model. Some students will have related services in addition to that, or other supplemental services if they need it.
So in years past, there would be incoming students, right? But now the goal is for homeschool, to go to their
We're
home
trying to
school.
have students go to their home school to be inclusive. There was also we did not have a level of need this year for students to go into the EDI program.
So Kelly, why don't you describe how we figured that out?
Okay, so, sorry, I started back in December, going back, visiting all the preschools, all our preschool students who were receiving either special education teacher support or were in an integrated or self-contained classroom at the preschool level. I then had conversations with their teachers, related service providers, reviewed their IEPs and updated assessments that are completed at annual review time. I also had our psychologists and some special ed teachers go out and see our students to help with the planning of this. This past spring, beginning in March, I think, I began having our annual review meetings for our preschoolers, where we had conversations with related service providers and planned for them for this incoming fall. Conversations with parents as well as their related service providers helped us decide what would be an appropriate program for their students. We do have students who are going to our self-contained programs at Altamont because of their level of need, but at this time we don't have any students recommended for EDI.
All right.
Anything else?
Thank you. All right, thank you, ladies.
Thank you very much.
Okay, and my last item is just a reminder that the New York State School Boards Association Fall Convention will be held in Buffalo, New York on October 27th through 29th. Registration opened on June 1st, and if we register before July 1st, we get a discount to our registration. So if anyone is interested in attending, please let Linda Livingston know. And that concludes my items.
Okay, I have one item. I want to take a minute and I want to recognize Colleen O'Connell. This is her last board meeting, so the board would like to thank you. The community would like to thank you for your service devoted to the Gildan Central School. Ms. O'Connell was the first elected to the board in July of 2004 and has served for 4 3-year terms on the board. She was the board president during 2011-12 and 2012-13 school years and has served on all 4 of the board's subcommittees, which include audit, business practices, communications, and the policy review committee, and has served as a PTA liaison to our schools as well as serving as on many hiring and other committees. The board would like to thank Mrs. O'Connell for her time and her service to the Gildan community and students. Her last day of service will be June 30th, 2016. So we have a little plaque here for her.
Alan, could I just add a little bit to that?
Feel free to comment.
Colleen, of all of my fellow board members, you have been most loyal and patient through the policy committee and have been such a contributor. You really are going to be missed sorely.
Thank you, Barbara.
Thank you so much. You've done great work on the policy committee. Over and above.
Well, you've made us do work.
Thank you,
Barbara.
And Colleen, we will definitely miss your voice. Feel free to come
any meeting. We will look forward to hearing from you.
I would not count on that.
After a year, you can run again.
Yeah. I am not going to pull a Kathy Barber. No.
I just want to thank you, Colleen. After my first year, you were like a great kind of mentor to me. You just kind of took that upon your own to tell me what's going on, how meetings run. So I appreciate that.
Thanks, Seema.
And Colleen, I would like to add, you were my introduction to the Guilderland Central School District because you chaired the search committee that brought me from Clinton to here, and I will always remember fondly our conversation. I can remember where I was standing when you called me to say, will you come to Guilderland? And I appreciate your professionalism and your caring concern for all of us who work here and for all of the children who attend here. You will be missed. We thank you for your service.
Great service as a president in those years, too.
Thank you, guys.
I'm just going to add one thing. I appreciate all of your comments because you always seem to bring a unique perspective into a different light, and I think that's really a compliment because not everybody is able to do that and step back and look at things from multiple perspectives. So I want to thank you personally. Okay, next, school business.
Okay, thank you. Based on the favorable reaction from the last meeting, we have a resolution this evening to purchase the live GPS system for our school buses. So the recommendation is to go with Tyler Technology. It interfaces with our existing routing software. The estimated cost is $88,380. This does include the parent notification capability that we discussed at the last meeting as well. And also the resolution includes the transfer of funds from our gasoline diesel fuel line to other services where we would purchase the software from.
Neil, did you say, too, though, that the parent notification may be delayed in terms of being implemented?
Yes, we may not have that piece up and running, likely will not have that piece up and running for the start of the school year. Our priority over the summer is always to get the routing done. So we will be doing that. Also, we have a lot of integration that has to happen. The GPS devices have to be installed on the buses. There's software, there's configuration, there's set up to get all of that system working. We also need technology to be able to handle the interface, to get the student information and parent information, that capability woven in, and how we're going to handle the device at the other end with the parents. So we have some technology pieces that we'll have to work through as well. So again, it's a struggle to get our routes done for the start of school and get everybody scheduled in our public schools and our private schools. But hopefully before the bad weather starts, we will have that capability up and running for parents.
Just to ask Colleen's great point last time, a parent can just see their own kids.
Yes, there is security in there, and that's the technology part to ensure that parents only can access their child, but that's in the literature for the product. There's a mechanism to restrict the access to the designated parent.
One of many great points Colleen has made.
Oh, stop.
Okay, so just to get this right, the motion is just for the agreement, because when you look through here, I don't see anything to do with the transfer of funds.
It's
lower down on the agenda.
Oh, it's on
farther
down. Okay, I didn't
it's
see
right
it
in the resolution that for this item. It does two things.
See it in there.
Authorizes the superintendent to sign the agreement and approve the transfer of budgeted funds from gasoline diesel fuel to other services.
Okay, all right, I didn't see that. Can I get a motion, please? Judy, second? Gloria? Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
Next, we have service agreements with two private providers for students with disabilities. The first is for Woods Services, it's placement, and also for Music Speaks, which is a provider of music therapy. And both of these agreements are for the summer and the following school year.
Okay. Barbara, second? Gloria? We're going to do all three of them at once, right? Okay, good. Any discussion or questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
Next is an intermunicipal agreement, and this is with Rensselaer Columbia Green BOCES, and that's to provide internal auditing services for the 2016-17 school year. This is a service that we've had for a number of years. We cross-contract through Rensselaer Columbia Green BOCES. For that service, there's no increase in the fee, and it is a requirement that we do have an internal audit conducted each year
Get a motion, please? Judy, second. Kathy, any questions or discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion passes.
Next is a recommendation to appoint the Honeywell Law Firm to provide legal services for the period beginning July 1st, 2016 through June 30th, 2019. Honeywell Law Firm is our current legal counsel for school matters, and their agreement is up at the end of June, so the resolution is to appoint them for a 3-year term.
Can I get a motion, please? Judy, Gloria, second.
I have a question.
Okay, go ahead.
Marie, will we still have the option of, well, I guess the question is, has the Honeywell Law Firm acquired someone who specializes in special ed, or will we still be seeking guidance from some of the people who specialized in that at Gervin and Ferlazzo, our prior, well, I mean, Jeff left the law firm.
Right. For the time being, we're going to continue doing what we're doing because both law firms are serving us well in their respective areas of expertise. So we have talked about doing an RFP for special education legal services at some point.
I didn't mean to suggest you should do that, because I think you're getting the best services there. But, I mean, this doesn't preclude us talking to our special ed specialists at Gervin and Ferlazzo.
No, not at all, not at all.
That's what I wanted to say.
Okay, sorry.
Thank you.
Okay, I did have a question. Did we have to do an RFP for this or not?
I'm sorry?
Did we have to do an RFP for this?
We're not obligated by any law to do so. As a good practice, we've done that periodically. We kind of did this last year when we selected another law firm when Jeff left. I mean, we had that process, but we're not required by law. We have invested in Jeff, and we use him as counsel and have for a long time, so I felt comfortable that in this capacity, a 3-year term would be appropriate.
Okay.
We can certainly do
I was just
RFP.
curious. I didn't know how it works. That's why I was
I mean, the other thing I just want to mention in parting is that, I mean, Jeff is one of the best school attorneys in the area. There are other really, really good school attorneys, but they're just not in Albany. So, I mean, you can go and get a really good one in Syracuse. You could hire my husband's firm. They're all in Buffalo, though. Or there's really good ones in Poughkeepsie. But, I mean, Barbara and I can tell you that we spent a lot of time in our early years with an attorney on a conference call in the high school principal conference room. And it's not the same as having your lawyer there. It doesn't give you the same amount of confidence. Wouldn't you agree, Barbara? I mean,
Absolutely.
Hancock and Estabrook was a fine law firm. That's where my husband started his career. And they still are a fine law firm, but they're in Syracuse. And it's just not the same. So if you're going to change this, you got to have someone who can come to the meetings. It really makes a difference.
Thanks. I wasn't suggesting that. I just wanted to understand what we had to do. Okay. Any other further questions or discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Or abstained? Motion passes.
Next is several budget transfers totaling $155,786 as outlined in your materials. At the end of the year, we need to balance our accounts, and these transfers will do that.
Can I get a motion? Judy, second. Gloria, any questions or discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Huh?
I have to do a roll call.
Oh, okay.
Call, that's the next one.
I think that's the next one.
Coming up.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Bond resolution.
That's the bond resolution. Okay.
I'm jumping ahead.
You're so eager.
All in favor again?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Okay, the next thing is a bond resolution authorizing the purchase of various school buses, which will be a roll call vote. So, can I get a motion? Gloria, second. Barbara? Any questions or discussion? Okay.
Mrs. Barber?
Yes.
Mrs. Frederico?
Yes.
Mr. McManus?
Yes.
Mrs. O'Connell?
Yes.
Mrs. Rivera? Mr. Simpson?
Yes.
Mrs. Slack?
Yes.
And Mrs. Tolville?
Yes.
Motion passes. And the last item on your is the internal audit reports.
Internal audit reports, we have 2 of them that were conducted this year, and as part of the internal audit process, there's a risk assessment, annual risk assessment that's done, and also there's areas that the audit committee will identify for special audit. So the audit committee indicated they would like the auditor to look at two particular areas. First one I'll start with is special programs. And there was an audit really to see how we were doing in terms of our high-cost state aid reimbursement. And these are for students with disabilities that tend to have a lot of services or be in a self-contained class where there's a lot of resources. The state allows extra aid if you have students whose costs exceed a certain threshold that's determined for each district. For the year that was audited, it was 2014, our threshold for those services per student was $33,045. So basically the auditor went through and looked at some students and some classes to see if in fact the threshold was exceeded and we should be claiming that extra high-cost aid. The auditor did find one instance of a class where when he performed the calculation, it didn't indicate that we should have applied for high-cost aid for those students, and we hadn't. And the issue there was really at the beginning of the year, we had one class model that had 3 teaching assistants, and during the course of the year, another teaching assistant was added that helped add additional costs to that classroom. We didn't go back and confirm during the course of the year before we concluded the process that circumstances hadn't changed. So one of the recommendations is to not only look at it at the beginning of the year, but to go back and say around now, May or June timeframe, and reconfirm that no changes have occurred that would cause those costs to shift. So that was one particular issue. The other thing that was indicated we should take a look at is lowering our internal threshold. It's very difficult to do these comprehensive calculations on all students, so we have to have some mechanism to fine-tune that a little bit. So we were using a threshold that was closer to what the state's threshold was. We've now dropped that back to $21,000. So if it appears that per student we're exceeding $21,000, we're going to go in and do the calculation, and our threshold was much higher before. So we're recommending that those two changes be incorporated as part of our follow-up corrective action plan, and that's what we're asking you to review this evening. This was discussed with the audit committee, who recommended that we bring that one forward to you for your approval. If there's no questions, I'll move on to the second one. Okay. The second one was an audit of retiree health care payments. Basically, the district uses a third-party administrator to do the billing function for retirees. So retirees, we provide the information on which plans retirees have, what their contributions are. We give that information to the third-party administrator, who actually issues the bills and collects the payments. So the idea here was to go back and see if the billing was correct, if the third-party administrator was billing correctly and everything was balanced. The auditor did find one instance where we had a retiree that was underbilled $156 for a 6-month period. There was a difference in the plans. The third-party administrator was billing under the assumption that it was a 2-person plan, and in fact, what we were billing for in the district and what the person had selected was one individual policy and one Medicare policy. So there wasn't consistency between the two methodologies. So we will need to go back and recollect that payment from the retiree. We've also worked out an arrangement with our third-party administrator to get some information and spreadsheets that we can more easily analyze and make sure that all of our systems are in sync now between what the district has recorded as the proper plans and proper premiums and what the third-party administrator is billing, and reconcile those two things.
Any questions on either of those? Can I get a motion to accept the 2 internal audit reports and the corresponding corrective action plans? Chris, second. Barbara? Any further discussion or questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
Okay, my first action item is a recommendation to the Board of Education to consider adding Shellmont Central School District and the Voorheesville Central School District to our merged hockey team. Our Suburban Council athletic directors have recently reviewed this and approved this, and now they are seeking your approval. Our hockey team will now include Guilderland, Scotia Glenville, Mahonison, Shellmont, and Voorheesville.
That's a big team.
That's a big team. It's a diverse team.
So the idea is that this is what we need to do to field the full team.
Exactly.
Is there enough interest to, there are only 5 people or 6 people on the ice at a time. We've got 5 or 6 schools.
But you have lines, you don't play the whole
I
game.
know, but it still isn't that many for that many schools. I'm just wondering if this is, I thought this was a program that we were phasing out.
Well, the idea is that if we have a bigger base of students who will play, the team will be more robust and may generate some more interest in playing. So I think this is an effort to rejuvenate the program.
Okay.
And the ADs and Regan are very supportive of this approach because, many of our hockey playing students don't play for school. They play in clubs and whatever, and so they're trying to bring it back under the school umbrella.
Thank
So
you.
they're giving it a try.
That makes sense.
Get a motion, please. Barbara, Seema, second. Any further questions or discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
And my next item is a request for the board to approve an agreement between the Guilderland Central School District and Tracy Brabender that would accept her resignation and our agreement. And that would be effective June 30th, 2016.
Can I get a motion, please? Judy, second. Seema? All in favor? Or any questions, I should say, first? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Board President action, we have to skip item 1, which is the superintendent's evaluation, because we didn't get to that in our first session of executive session. The next thing is we have some Board of Education policy adoptions. So I'm going to let Barbara speak to the 4 policies that are there.
Again, you've seen them all, citizens education, display of the flag, the regulation for that, and the program for pregnant students. And I didn't have any calls about any questions, so it should be good to go.
Well, I sent one email about it because the only question I had, I always have a question, I'm sorry, is for D, you crossed out the BOCES program.
Right.
It doesn't exist.
Right, it doesn't exist anymore. So really, there is no policy anymore because it's called programs. And you deleted the program because it doesn't exist. So I don't know what, I'm not sure if it really says anything more with the policy.
I think it's just general academic program, like their plan.
It doesn't say anything. We could keep it in.
Is there another title?
Go
I don't know. It's really, to me, like fluff now. It doesn't really say anything. Obviously, we would help all students, so I don't.
Right, basically that's what it's saying.
Right. Well, we don't put it in for, obviously, any student that's struggling or needs help, we help them. So I don't know. I understood before what happened. There's a policy. I know policies are like your little children. You're not going to let any go. I know. So we're going to add more. We're never going to subtract. But
Don't ask her which one she loves best.
well, she told us today.
Did you have a
I
question,
want to say
Kevin?
it's appropriate to adopt policies about the flag on Flag Day.
Exactly, exactly.
Did you do that on purpose?
Yes, we worked very hard to make that happen today.
Good point. Can I get a motion, please?
Colleen.
Seema, second. Colleen? Any further discussion or questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. And the last thing we have is a contract ratification. And contract ratification is be it resolved that the Board of Education authorizes Superintendent of Schools Marie Wiles to execute the proposed memorandum of agreement between the Guilderland Central School District and the non-instructional supervisors, other management personnel of the Guilderland Central School for the duration of the collective bargaining agreement, July 1st, 2016 through June 30th, 2019. Can I get a motion, please? Colleen, second. Gloria, does anybody have any questions or comments? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Next thing we have is board committee reports. The first one is the audit committee. We went over the internal control audit reports that we were given, and we passed a motion on them. And so that is one of the items that we talked about. And the next item that we also voted on through the consent agenda was the internal audit reports for the expenditures. So, I mean, that's what the meeting was that we had a week or so ago. So, other than that, I have nothing else to report.
I just remember, I think one other thing we were talking about was the Medicaid analyst position. And I just want to give Neil credit. He contacted BOCES and spoke to BOCES so that we were able to table that because it's not just a position that this school would need. A lot of schools needed to bring SED and business office together. And Neil on his own called BOCES, and BOCES agreed, and now they're trying to get approval to offer that as a service instead of hiring a position, so we were able to table that down. I know you don't like credit, but I think you deserve it.
Marie helped with that too. She was.
All right. You didn't say that in the no.
No, I didn't say that at the meeting, but I'll say it now.
Next would be business practices.
We haven't met. We no need to meet since last meeting.
Okay, communication?
Yes, we did meet yesterday. First item on the agenda was the board workshop plan, so we had a little discussion with Marie, had been working with Dr. Wells at BOCES. BOCES. So they were finalizing, we were finalizing plans for that workshop. We will be starting at 6 on July 6th, and we'll have a light supper for everyone, and then we'll get started around 6:30. We're hoping to wrap up by 9. So if people could plan accordingly, 8:30, 9 o'clock. Hopefully that will work. We will be using, of course, the work that Dr. Singleton did with everyone here that got to come in, the parents and everyone who came with the district priorities discussion. So we'll be using that work to facilitate our conversation so that we can come to some agreement as to the direction we want to give the administrative team as they begin their work this summer on the district priorities and goals. We did talk a bit about the listening tour and how to structure that for the fall, allowing time for staff at the various schools to meet with a couple of members of the board in a kind of an informal way. We kind of got hung up with how to phrase like a kind of an opening invitation question that we would want people to come with them in their minds. So we're hoping to build on the work of the district priorities, the work that was done that day, so that we're going to wait for the night of our board workshop to kind of finalize that question, with the hope that our discussions with the staff at the various schools will continue the conversation about our direction, our goals, how we're doing, how are things working out at the various buildings, what should we be thinking about, are there areas we should consider, but to focus it around so that we're all moving in the same direction towards the same goals and highlighting the same priorities. So hopefully that night of our board workshop will kind of finalize that, the way we'll phrase it, so that when the staff come and talk informally with us, we'll have a framework to operate under. We thought we'd go in groups of 2 or 3 so that somebody could at least take notes, because trying to remember what you've heard and people's suggestions might be hard, so we're kind of work on that a little bit. So be prepared in September to sign up for, hopefully people will be prepared to sign up for attending some of those informal meetings. And our third item, we talked a little bit about the public responses to our budget communication efforts during this year's budget season. We still don't have the results of that we sent to BOCES of the after budget surveys that were done by people at the polls. So we don't have that yet, so we didn't really have that to reflect on. We're suggesting that next year's communication committee look at that survey and then see if there might be some tweaking that needs to be done or some questions that need to be added to get at some of the information that we might want as a board through that survey. And that perhaps by having it available at the polls, but then also after the polling, send it out electronically, and the first question being, did you already take this survey? But then try to elicit more input as to how they got information about the budget, what things are working, because we've tried so many different ways of sending out information, and maybe we have to continue to use all those ways, but at least to get some input from the public as to what the better ways seem to have been for people, which ways they access better. And I think that was it. We didn't make a new meeting because there'll be a new committee.
Thank you, that was a good informative report. Policy?
I think we may have wrapped up our work for the year.
Thank you, Barbara. Oh, come on, one more meeting, squeeze it in.
We tried.
Okay. Public comment number 2?
Aaron McNamara. Aaron McNamara.
Okay, Aaron McNamara, please. I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
Erin McNamara, Illinois Teachers Association President. I didn't intend to speak tonight, but I just wanted to comment, given some of the discussion that happened earlier this evening, so I hope you'll just bear with me for a moment. I jotted down some notes. I would be remiss, I feel like, if I did not acknowledge that when discussion arises regarding inclusion, we have a tendency, or I may say like district office, maybe the board discussions have a tendency to reflect on what teachers are not doing for students or what we feel like we're not arriving at for students. And when the term underserved is used, and not meaning to say underserved, but underserved, and then placing inclusion, someone on a pedestal like Julie Costin, Dr. Costin, I mean her no ill will, but that's not something that we've experienced yet. We still have to go through that. And I'd like to acknowledge the fact that we have sustained very deep cuts over the last, I don't know how many years, severe cuts. And we always talked about Guilderland being a beacon for other districts. We were not the cookie cutter model at all. We were what other districts aspired to be. And when I hear the word underserving students, you know, that can't help but come across as a reflection upon the work of the people who are employed here. And that bothers me. I feel at times, because of the cuts, I'm not saying that, you know, some of the decisions that had to be made, they were very difficult decisions, and we were in woefully, you know, under budgeted times, but we feel sometimes that we were underserved, because when I hear about the conversations tonight of teachers stepping up and saying, our class sizes at the elementary level are too big, and we have outside organizations who are coming in and taking up our space, and they seem to be taking priority over the students who are already Guilderland students. Those impact teachers, and that can underserve teachers and what they can do for the students. So I just felt like the need to acknowledge that. And the other part I wanted to very much suggest or leave you with, because this is the last meeting of the school year, is that we do really think about using the unassigned teachers for reducing class size at the elementary level. I think that is just crucial. And in the conversation about using TAs to offset the duties of teachers at the high school, please keep in mind when teachers are co-planning, because they're in an integrated model, an inclusive model, that might only be 20% of their schedule. So that planning time that's devoted with working with another teacher, they still have other classes for which they are responsible in grading and planning. So if you could really think about that time for them, that would go a long way as well. So I would appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you. The last item on the agenda is board ideas, issues, and sharing. Does anybody have any? Barbara?
Well, I just wanted to follow up on our discussion, you know, with the Mrs. Landry and the students. My sense of the board, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that we'd like the administration to either put in that extra section if they feel that it wouldn't totally disrupt the other 11. In the event that that were the feeling, that those students would in some form be allowed to do something as they have done in the past to get honors credit for this coming year, until, you know, Damien has a larger conversation of what is an honors course. So I just want to make sure I'm reading the board correctly.
No, I'm not sure that the feeling of the board, because we have talked to, I mean, we have heard that it does significantly disrupt the other 11 class, change the numbers in the other 11
Well, that's what I'm saying.
classes.
If that is...
Yeah, I'm just
that
not
is
sure
the
that we
sentiment,
felt that
then
was a solution.
At least give the kids an opportunity to do something.
That is okay. I think the other 11 classes we have to consider pretty heavily.
Yeah. Okay.
I would support the second, not the, you know.
Well, that's fine. I just...
Is that the middle ground? Is that what you mean by
That's the middle ground.
Making opportunities for,
Yeah.
if it's meaningful work. I don't think 2 papers a semester is meaningful work, and I don't know who's going to take that on in terms of what faculty members are going to be willing to do that.
But looking into it as a possibility.
Right.
But I don't want you to think that the feeling of the board is that we can change the classes at this point.
No, that's why I said...
Okay, that's why I'm
I said
saying.
it. Yeah.
Yeah,
No,
okay.
that we want to give these kids the opportunity in some fashion for this upcoming year.
And I would just kind of make an addendum to what you're saying. And I think you guys have to really look at the kids, because, I mean, if that's true with the grades and all those pieces, I mean, if that's not an honor student, then I don't know,
What is?
what is? I know I wasn't, but I'm saying that.
You don't have to admit these things.
If I got one of those accomplishments, my parents would be very excited. So I'm just saying, I don't know how.
It raises an excellent question.
Because we've always maintained, and I know that's something you've said, Marie, that we start with our students, and we look at what their needs are. And if we've got these many students that we're not able to get a challenging program, or they feel, that the parents feel that they're not getting a challenging program, then that's a problem. These numbers are large. They're very large. So I think we need to, if we're looking at our students, and we also have to look at that criteria, because a lot of, Tom listed off the criteria. You can get scores. I mean, if you've got kids in hundreds and 90s, but then you've got these other things that are very subjective. They're hard to put, I mean, it's like recommending a kid for a varsity, junior varsity, athletic team, you can look at the skills. Can they play the game? Well, if you've got a score in the 90s, obviously you can play the game pretty well. So, and then you've got these other subjective things that are a little harder, they're a softer kind of things. But we have to start with the kids and look at the group and say, if they need something that we are not providing, then we owe it to those kids to say, how do we provide it then? Whether this is the solution or something else, but we have to deal with this. I mean, Damien was right in terms of, this has been around a long time. It was around in the middle school all the time, every year when accelerated math started. How is it going to affect the other kids on the team? When you pull those kids out and make a section, the other three don't have those kids in it has been a long problem. So wrestling with it will be interesting.
I think particularly, like you mentioned, it's just, the humanities are a lot subjective. And I think motivation is something that also is considered. And if someone's motivated enough to write an essay, I mean, you might consider that as a high level of motivation, so.
Well, I would think if someone was getting a 90-something in my class, that would tell me that either I'm really grading really low or easy, but it would tell me they must be working hard. They obviously committed. They're doing all the assignments. That should be, all those other characteristics should fall in there. They should be working hard. I mean, if I'm doing my job as a teacher and challenging those kids and they're getting 98 or 95, that should be the standard. If they can do that in my class, then that's my recommendation. I'm giving them that grade.
But, to
what other recommendation could there be?
But to Kathy's point, we so have, sorry Seema, but we so have math and science up on this pedestal.
Exactly.
And we offer it and accelerate it in 8th grade. And for kids who do humanities and are good writers and love social science, it's the first time you're offered an honors opportunity. Right. I remember when my daughter Hannah, she knew there was no way she was taking, algebra and then earth science when she was in 8th grade. That just wasn't, she did well, but that wasn't her strong suit. But I remember her turning to me as a 7th grader and saying, well, Mommy, if they offered social studies and English in honors in 8th grade, I'd be there for sure.
Right.
So you're saying to those kids, we're not offering those opportunities at 8th grade, As an English major, I have a problem with that, but.
Yeah, both my kids are English majors too. I'm an English minor.
Anything else? Go ahead.
I would just like to say that I know a number of us have been to a number of awards programs over the last, I feel like I've been out every night, but I went to the ENL extravaganza evening was unbelievable. The number of families that came together with the foods from the different countries, it is, every year I love it. This year it just seemed to be even better. And they had a talent show. Oh my God, the talent among these kids. So I'd like to thank the ENL department and Michelle and Mrs. Ranieri for all her work there. There was great presentation programs by the middle school, the President's Award, the Achievement Awards, the board awards night at the high school. The staff at those schools, really did a beautiful job honoring those students. So I'd like to thank, Tom, Mike and all those guys who put those together, and all the staff that came out, the administrators that came out to give out the awards, and the parents that came. It's a great celebration time in June.
I know you were talking about I think the NISBA amendments, and I know in the past we've always voted on the amendments, but we've never proposed one. And I just hope whatever, I'm not sure the right committee, if it's communications committee, but I hope we really look at doing amendments. One idea I really think that we should really look at, I'm just going to plant the seed, is I don't think it's right that if parents do not sign off and for the session notes, that I know it's more of a federal issue, but I'm not sure if other schools have found ways around it. But we have to provide this service. And I know John Rizzo looked at it and spoke to people, and there's no reason not to sign off on it. But if
And
we
what
have
is
to-
it that they're, I'm sorry. I didn't
They
hear.
have to sign off permission in order to get reimbursement.
For Medicaid.
Medicaid.
Oh, okay, that's what I
Yeah.
didn't know.
So, audit committees looked at this, we've talked about it a lot, I know, but I really think that we should put this in as an amendment. So I'm just gonna plant the seed that, I mean, my bad analogy is, it's almost like you go to a restaurant, you refuse to give your credit card, and they still have to serve you dinner. It does not make any sense to me. You have to provide the services, no reason why they don't sign off, but we still can't get reimbursement. It makes absolutely no sense, and I think that's something.
Barbara? And I just have a follow-up on letters that we've gotten and presentations that we've gotten on the Victory Childcare at the Pine Bush. Their letters seem to make a lot of sense about the red pod versus the blue pod, with the playground not being outside, bothering the kids. And I'm just wondering, can we take another look at that and see if there's a possibility to put those kids in the red pod versus the blue pod? Just from the standpoint of kids playing outside your window, when you're a kindergarten kid, you're going to want to be out there, not want to be inside. And I don't know how expensive it would be to put bathrooms in there if that was the reason why we did it. And apparently there's a outside entrance that can be used in the red pod so that the kids wouldn't have to go through the school. Now, I don't know if that's correct or not, but they seemed very logical, their presentation. And I'm just wondering, is it possible to look at it again, or are we set in stone here?
Well, the key reason why we use the blue pod is because it's already a primary grade learning environment, and there are bathrooms in the classrooms. So if we were to move to the red pod, we would need to construct bathrooms in those classrooms, which would be an expensive undertaking, and probably, I don't even know if we could do it by the middle of August. So, it would really be very difficult right now to undo all of this work. The work of selecting the blue pod actually happened back in December, when, you remember, we've had many, many conversations about excess space and how does that excess space actually translate into classrooms, because our study equated excess space in square footage per kid, which doesn't necessarily equal classroom space. So we charged the three principals of the three buildings where we had the most excess space to look at their whole building and ask the question, so what makes the most space, taking into consideration both the disruption to our own students in the grade levels and the needs of the pre-K program. And we followed the recommendations of our principals in that. And so, a lot has been building since January in order to make all this happen. So it is, really the 11th hour to say we're not going to do this at this point. There's a lot of concern I heard about moving our own classrooms out of the blue pod. There is no plan to do that whatsoever. The idea of potentially adding a section to Pine Bush, is on the table, but as of June, today, 14th, there are other needs across the district that might be much more dire, particularly at Guilderland and Westmere, where we have many, many numbers of students who arrive during the summer and fewer that arrive in Pine Bush or Linwood or any place else. So the classroom at Pine Bush that is most susceptible to needing another section is second grade, which is not in the blue pod. At the kindergarten level, we are close to, we might be at the upper guideline, but we would consider adding additional TA time to support those classrooms before we would add a whole section, even if we went 1 or 2 students over. So we have to balance all of those things. And I know the school buildings are anxious to know who's going where and when and how, but for Pine Bush this year, they kind of have to be comfortable with a bit of ambiguity for a little while. If the numbers show up, then, you know, we'll do what we need to do. Sorry, I just bird walked on class sizes there, but I don't think we can undo the blue pod for pre-K at this point. I mean, Victory has done tons of planning. We have spent, I don't know, 7 or 8 hours in meetings and touring the building and talking through plans and getting Cliff's team poised to do the work to ready the areas. So I don't know what to say at this point. I think it would be very difficult to say we're going to change course at this point.
I just want to say that I will defend the transparency of the Victory and the pre-K to my death. I mean, the parents' remarks were deeply offensive that we have not been transparent. Maybe people haven't been paying attention, but we have been absolutely transparent. And we were guided by a committee that was formed that told us to go in this route because people didn't want to close Altamont Elementary. You're forgetting the whole part of the process. Don't close the school. Find another place. Ad hoc committees made recommendations that we've followed through with. We've been completely transparent. And you know, what's really clever is the use of language. Carrie Deneen refers to it as daycare. It's not daycare. It's pre-K. It has a very substantial curriculum. But when you're against it, it's just daycare and it's a burden on us. We're serving our teachers and our community because there's no non-denominational pre-K full day in Guilderland. This is a service that's needed. And to regard this as something that we've done in some, like, you know, capricious fashion at the last minute, it's just, that is not a fair characterization of our work, and I will defend it to people who are going to say otherwise.
I also felt offended by kind of the insinuation that we didn't care about the safety of the students at Pine Bush. I mean, we have done everything we can, and I know the administrative team has worked on this about, you know, entries and people coming in. I mean, that has been, security and safety for our kids has been #1. And the implication was that, well, we really didn't think about that and we're doing it at the 11th hour. But it's been throughout the plan.
Nothing could be further than the truth in those statements.
We have been hearing about that. So.
Anybody else? I think you got to end it on Colleen's word.
Executive session.
Oh, that's right.
Can I get a motion to continue into executive session? Judy, second. Gina?
Not seconded.
Aye. Opposed? So we're adjourned.